Right everyone, today we're here with my round 15 tips and predictions. It'll be the last week that we actually have the buys, and I'm not a fan of the bye weeks for a few reasons. You got less games of footy, and the views on the tips videos aren't as great as the views are normally. So this week with the buys, the last 6 teams are Adelaide, Collingwood, Hawthorn, Richmond, St Kilda, and the Western Bulldogs. And before we jump into anything else as well, if you haven't checked already, I released a Div 12 Reggie's vlog from the Adelaide trip. It really does seem like there's becoming a bit of a trend that those are the sort of videos people aren't really interested in watching, since that is also done even worse than my Dale Thomas vlog. So if you guys want to check it out, it is up there, but maybe we'll have to do some other bits of content then if that isn't the sort of stuff you guys are really interested in watching. Alright, but into the tips, we've got a review round 14, and it was actually a really good round of footy as like a fan, just with how high scoring it was. A couple of really good games of footy. I am lucky that it says 5 because I did tip the Dockers. I don't really know how I ended up tipping the Dogs. I must have just mistakenly clicked them, so I got an extra tip. Brisbane St Kilda, I was off by 4. Really good game this was. The Saints actually took it up to the Lions late with a losing score of over 100. The Dogs with the Dockers, look at the high scores in that one as well. The Dogs were demolishing. I wouldn't really say I can take that tip since I tipped Freo, but whatever. Richmond v Hawthorn, I thought the Tigers would get up for Dusty's 300th. Wasn't the case. City got over the top of Adelaide. Collingwood and North, in probably the best game of the year. That was awesome to watch. And then the Giants and the Power. You know, pretty average game, not going to lie, for round 14. Did have a couple of people that used the Joker. I don't get why they're still doing it during the bye weeks, but Riley Gilchrist, Walladuga, ESPN fan, and Big Man Frank all with a perfect score using their Joker. A few people also got a perfect score here for not showing them. A lot of people this round tipped a perfect score because theoretically all the favourites won. Upwards of 300 plus people this week got a perfect score, so it could be the most for any round this season so far. Swan Hunter still leading with a score of 96. SJ Fields with a score of 95. And we have 4 people with a score of 94 in my tipping competition. Remember, if you want to join it still, the link is down below. But we will cap it in probably 5 or 6 weeks. So last week for the big calls, the punishment with the most likes was to wear an Elsa dress to an AFL game and then randomly start singing Let It Go. They've commented this 15 times, this Swanee for Life person, and I needed to get 2 for the big calls for the bye week. So if I get 2 this week, I won't ever have to do this in my life probably. I got the Sydney v Adelaide game correct, where Sydney would kick 6 or more consecutive goals. That was in the 3rd quarter, I believe. They scored, I think, 10 in a row at one stage. And then the second game that I got correct was also in North Melbourne v Collingwood. Good one to get right in this one. North to lead at half time. They were in front by 42 points, I think. Or was it 48 even? So I think it's pretty fair, like last week with the 6 games. This week I'll only need to get 2 of the big calls correct because it's a shorter round of footy. I still do have a few I got to catch up on, but as mentioned before, as long as they're all done by October 31st, then I won't be having to do that 100-hour stream. I do want to start doing a couple of the ones that I need to still do over the next few weeks. It's just been a bit shitty with my time organisation and getting those punishments done. Okay, so for round 15, the first game is on Friday, and we have Carlton taking on Geelong at the MCG. Both sides coming off the bye, and I believe if the Cats win, they do put themselves in the top 4. Of course, the Blues, I think at the moment, are probably already locked to be in the 4 at the end of the round, regardless. I feel like this could be a good one, to be honest. The last time these two sides played, it was a really good game. High scoring, the Cats got up. That was when they were on their run of 7 wins in a row. Now they're not going so well in terms of their form. Carlton, certainly at the moment, are the better team and look like probably the 2nd seed right now when you look at the power rankings and also the odds for the premiership behind the Swans. The Blues would have some confidence after the win against the Bombers, you know, one of their biggest enemies in the competition, although for the games or the bits of the game that I was watching, the Bombers seemed to be on top. They just couldn't finish things off with their conversion in the last forward 50 entry. So the Cats are sliding with their form with the top 8 spot that they're probably clinging on to. Maybe will be dropping that top 8 spot depending on other results if they lose. But they were pretty, solid over Sydney, especially early on with the first 6 goals of the game. We thought, geez, they got their running play back on going. But unfortunately against Sydney, it's just really hard to stay 4-quarter consistent against the top Sydney side like that. And they tried to keep pace, but they just couldn't. Form would spell a Carlton win, maybe by 5 more goals at the moment. But on a Friday night, these are sort of the random games Cats could play well in. I've seen a fair share of Geelong upsets, whether it's towards them, whether it's towards the opposition on the first game of the season. And the Cats are pretty good at the MCG as well. So something's telling me this will be one of those rare Geelong games that maybe right now their form no one expects them to win. With 87% going Carlton, and I'll be one of the 13% going the Cats. I reckon they get it done by 12 points, and they'll win the game with less scoring shots. Next up, we have Port Adelaide and Brisbane at the Adelaide Oval. The first game on the Saturday, and another opportunity, I reckon, for a pretty good match, because I feel like both these sides, in terms of the way they play and where they're at, are pretty even at the moment. Brisbane, though, they're in some pretty good form, and that's why at the moment they're actually the favourites, $1.77 away from home. But their form has suggested that with a couple good wins in a row. Obviously, against the Dogs, they were really strong. Against the Saints, they were also pretty good, especially early on. They tore apart St Kilda's defence, but then they almost dropped a lead of, I think, around 40 points in that last quarter. So, yeah, a little bit of concerns there. They'd still got a couple of late ones and ended up winning by 20. I thought they were still the better side for longer, but there'd be maybe a couple concerns with the way they finished that game against the Saints. Danaher kicked 6 goals, I think, so him and Hipwood, their last couple have been really good. And on the other side of things with form, Port Adelaide, they haven't had the greatest form before the bye, after the bye, during the bye. 2 losses in a row. And against the Giants, they just looked really flat in the way they went about it and the way they moved the footy. They couldn't get anything going up forward. Their midfield was really weak. I feel like they were definitely beaten by GWS's midfield. And I thought dominated after quarter time and probably should have lost the game by more in what was a pretty shit game of footy, especially after the awesome game of North Melbourne v Collingwood earlier. But yeah, Port couldn't score. I think Finn Lace needs to be back on the side. Marshall didn't really do much up forward. No one really did much up forward at the moment for Port Adelaide. They're going to want a response as well. Like with 2 losses in a row, I think they're going to want a big response back at home. Brisbane, I still can't fully trust them. Yes, they've had a couple wins in a row. Yes, people reckon they could be bouncing back into the 8. And it could still occur. And the Lions, as of late, haven't been the best at the Adelaide Oval. Against the Power last year, they got done in. And it's a day game. Port Adelaide in the day games at the Adelaide Oval seem to have a flawless record. They seem to just be so good there and seem to always get wins. So it might be another one of those games where Port Adelaide are clicking and Brisbane just aren't completely on. And I think the Power will win this game by 28 points and lead for 80% or more of the game as my big call. Alrighty, next up we have the Battle of the Bridge between the Giants and the Swans. And obviously these games seem to normally entertain. Hopefully we're set for another good game. But it's going to be a real tough one for the Giants at the moment because they're facing a Sydney side that are absolutely on form. They haven't dropped a game in a while. They keep just stringing these wins together and just continuing to solidify themselves as the premiership favourites. But it was good to see the Giants finally get a little bit of form going their way ahead of this rivalry. They won by 22 points, but probably should have won by more. It took a little bit of time to get their game going, but once they did, they were all over the Power, I thought, for most of it. And we saw a little bit more of what made them so elite late in 2023 with their fast transition movement through the middle of the ground. The Giants will definitely take something out of that win, but will need to be, I feel like, a whole lot better against Sydney, because Sydney are definitely a class above right now. I thought maybe finally the Swans had an off game against the Cats and against the Crows, but that seemed to not be the case at all. The Swans just got going a little bit later into the game, and now they're the sort of side that could be almost like Collingwood, maybe a little bit like the comeback Kings, where they find it too easy right now with how good they are, so they're going to let their opposition get a 4 to 5 goal head start. As mentioned earlier, they kicked 10 consecutive goals from the third quarter onwards. And even with their slow start, you could always sense they were going to come back. Joel and Marty was the sort of the turnaround in that game, the difference maker. He kicked 4 in the second, 4 in the third, and 9 for the entire game. What a game either he had. The Crows just couldn't seem to match up with him at all. And even with their slow start, you could always have a feeling that they were always going to come back into the game, which they did. So the Giants here could be a possible upset tip if you wanted to be brave. But right now, I think what I'm going to do with the Swans is, unless they prove me otherwise with probably a loss, I'll just keep tipping them, because right now the Swans, with how they're going, they're free tips, they're free wins. They're probably not going to lose this still, I don't think. It could be a good game though, but I'm going to say the Swans get up by 20 points with my big call. The Giants choke a 20 or more point lead. And the last game on Saturday, we have Melbourne and North Melbourne at the MCG. I genuinely reckon it could be the most interesting of all the games played on this day. With how Melbourne right now are going, they're in some horror form at the moment. After the Saints game, it looked like everything was going smooth sails, but unfortunately, they picked up 2 really bad losses, and they're now 4 of 5 losses, and currently are pretty much almost completely out of the race when it comes to the premiership. And finals looks like it's not going to happen right now with the D's. They're in horror form. I feel like they're playing North for the worst time. Before the bye, were convincingly beaten against the Pies. Let's be real. They had nothing going up forward. They just haven't got enough of their star players this season going. For example, Clayton Oliver. And now they're without Petrarca for the entire season, which is only going to make things more difficult for them. I do feel bad for North Melbourne, because clearly they were really strong against the Pies last week. That were almost going to provide one of the best upsets of the season. They're up by 54 points, and they scored their highest score so far this season at 86 in the first half. But they just completely stopped basically after that, and they just stopped attacking. They just didn't have any run. Collingwood held all the run after halftime pretty much, and they just couldn't stop Dacos. He went wild after halftime as well. So it was disappointing for North because they played so well. I haven't seen them play as good as they did in that first half, probably since before 2019. Should be on 2 wins in a row. Who knows how gassed are they going to be for this game from the last one, but you would think they should be back and ready and should have a fair shout at this one. I reckon they'd be confident that they can make it close like they did against the Pies. Against North, they won't smash him, I don't reckon. They'll probably get the win. I think they're going to need to win this game to just give themselves something, but it'll be a scrappy contest. North will be competitive, but I'll say the D's get up by 15 points with my big call. We're going to have a shit-ass crowd. We're going to have a crowd of 20,000 or less. And now on the Sunday, I'll probably stream both of these games like I have been doing as of late with the Sunday games. I've been really enjoying the Sunday games as of late. And this game probably won't be the best. We will see, though. Essendon v Sydney. On the 1:10 p.m. time slot at Marvel. Yeah, both sides will be back after the break in the bye. You'd think this would be the lock of the week with the tips. Like, if I had to pick the gauntlet, I'd probably say this would be the gauntlet tip. They have lost 2 in a row, though, the Bombers, but they could have won in both. I was speaking to a few Essendon fans who did actually get the chance to watch the Carlton game, and they were saying that they were probably the better side. But like it's been a bit of a common trend for the Bombers, they couldn't get it going up forward, and that was sort of the case why they lost that game. And obviously the game before against Gold Coast, I didn't think they were that bad either. They kept up with them for longer, and possibly inaccuracy was the reason they didn't win that game. So they should be back to hopefully a win in this one. A loss, though, to an out-of-form West Coast here could probably almost kill their genuine finals hope, and would probably drop their finals chances below 50% if I had to say. I will say, though, Eagles are pretty average away from home. They've been in some poor form, even at home, with a couple of losses against some average sides. They lost against the Saints. Against North Melbourne, they probably should have won. I doubt they'll make much of a challenge, unlike they did last year, although, who knows? Who bloody knows? But I'm going to make this tip simple. The Eagles, I think, will have a couple of decent quarters like they have in previous games, but Essendon, similar to their North win, I think they're going to get the job done, I reckon, by 42 points. And Zach Merritt, he's going to be awesome. I reckon he's going to have 35 or more disposals as my big call. Well, last but not least, we have Fremantle take on Gold Coast, 4 o'clock at Optus Stadium. And this is a very important game for the Dockers to respond after what they dished up against the Dogs. They conceded 23 goals against the Bulldogs side that still didn't have Aaron Norton, didn't have Sam Darcy. And yeah, it seemed like in the end of that game, they just basically gave up. It's like they accepted defeat and they didn't really want to apply much defensive pressure at all. I think 8 goals in that last quarter conceded. And it's weird because Freo have one of the best defence in the competition. So, very disappointing game for Freo. They always play shocking after the bye, which seems to be weird. But luckily for them, they're back at home. And they play their best footy at Optus Stadium. And luckily for them, again, they're playing against Gold Coast. And for every Gold Coast game, I don't even need to take recent form into account. All I need to do is see who's playing home or away. And if it's a Gold Coast away game, then I'll tip the opposition. If it's Gold Coast home game, I'll tip Gold Coast. And because of that, I think Freo will win. I know Gold Coast can win. Like, they're capable of winning away. They just haven't shown it yet this season. And I think Freo still should have the response. But I think the Suns will be strong. They were pretty decent against the Saints, although I thought the Saints were better. And I think like the Saints game, this could be a game where Gold Coast take it up to them, but maybe a couple of umpiring decisions go towards Freo. They stiffed them over in that last few minutes. Yeah, Suns can win this game, but I reckon the Dockers by 6 points in a good game of footy. And this is probably the most random of all the big calls I've ever done since I first started this in 2021. But my big call is that both sides' final scores will end in the same starting digit. So, for example, if the scores are 72 to 78, that'll be a big call correct. If the scores are 78 to 84, that wouldn't be. That also means if both sides score over 100, it would be correct because it's 1, the starting digit. And if, let's just say, Freo win 114 to 18, theoretically, that could also be correct as well. So, weird big call to finish things off. Only the 6 games. We've got Carlton, Port, Sydney, Melbourne, Essendon, and Freo. I could get 6 here. I just don't know about the Carlton Geelong game. As always, put down your punishments below in the comment section. Leave a like if you enjoyed and get that subscribe account ticking. And I will see you all in the next video. Thank you all for watching. Have a good one.